Hey, welcome back. We got the 12-team Superflex Money League team here. About to hear from our number 6 team all the way through our number 1 team. Chris, we're going to see a whole bunch more quality. We started to move in the right direction as we, move towards the end of the show last time. Chris, number 6, we're starting off red hot. This is one of my favorite teams that I've ever seen. Ever, ever, ever. It's no lie. It's aptly named maybe next year. Wait till you see this team here, Chris. You're gonna fall in love. All right. We've got Joe Burrow, DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, Garrett Wilson, Zay Jones, Jameson Williams, Dawson Knox, Kenneth Walker, Travis Etienne, and T Law. Guys on the bench, we've got Rashad Penny, we've got Khalil Herbert, we've got Rashad Bateman, maybe worth a mention. Irv Smith, I like him out in Cincy, Chris. Nothing on Taxi Squad worth mentioning. And then look here, Chris, we've got pick 2 and we've got pick 3 in this year's draft. I just love the options here. I love where it's going. I love how he's built this team. I just think these picks are going, and this is what I wanted you to keep in mind. I think these picks are going to be very interesting in what he does with them because I think he's got to find a way to get his hands on a running back or a wide receiver here with these 2 picks. It can't be quarterback, right? I mean, Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow, you're set for life. It's an interesting team here, Chris, but I like it. This is one of my favorite teams. I think it's going to be a lot of fun for this team.
Matt, we haven't seen the 101 yet, have we?
We have not seen the
Okay.
101.
Okay. So I was gonna say let's figure out a way to give 102 plus something to get to the 101. But I don't think that's gonna happen. Just kind of knowing what the 101 is right now, and if a contender has it, I mean they're adding an absolute stud at running back for him. So, oh boy, it's really tough because you could go after the next best running back, whether that's Jonathan Taylor or Christian McCaffrey. But the 102 here, which is going to be a quarterback, is almost more valuable than those guys. So I think it's a really tough spot here to get the running back help he needs. It's going to take some kind of a very interesting deal here to fill his holes because he's got, I think I want to get rid of Zay Jones and Jamal Williams. I want to upgrade both those with one of my picks here at 102 or 103. And I don't care which one I give up, obviously. I'll take a quarterback at 103 or trade out again. Um, so he's got 2 holes to fill. Tough. It's a tough spot here. McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, both guys were in the sort of those fringe teams that we could maybe prey on and try and make something happen. But the question is, can you make all the pieces fit, right? But yeah, I'm with you. I love the looks of this team. He's a contender as is, but definitely in that 5 to 8 range. I think is sort of that same ballpark. But boy, he's got a lot going for him.
Yeah, and listen, we've seen the teams at the back end that are very pick needy for this year's draft. I wonder if any of those guys can rub their nickels enough together to make a dime and present it to this team, Chris, for that 102. Certainly not going to package them together. I mean, I don't think anybody had the
No.
horses to make that happen. If the McCaffrey owner wanted to entertain that or the Barkley, even still, that's not getting done, right? Based off what we've seen in startup drafts so far this offseason, just not going to happen. Um, oh man, Chris, it's so interesting. I'm not going to ruin the surprise, but let's just say that him getting 101 is completely off the table. And I mean completely off the table. That team that
Right.
has the 101 has a single glaring hole, kind of, and it's at the running back position. So, that team is going to be, we'll get to that team in a little bit. Okay. More focus on this team. Chris, I think this team's really good. I love the way it's built. I love the options that are going to be presented to this team. I mean, let's just throw Kenneth Walker in at that running back spot. And, now all of a sudden it's just the flex spot that we've got to clean up and the Zay Jones. A guy like Rashad Penny could slot in here pretty easily. Herbert as well, with Chicago could be an interesting play. So this team, I'm going to want to probably follow up with this league and see what happens with pick 2 and 3. What do you do, Chris? You have to trade them. You cannot keep 2 and 3 because you're going to be reaching if you go, unless Jameer Gibbs ends up in an absolute number one spot, which I don't even know what the good spot would be for him. And whoever you look at as your wide receiver one, where's he going to end up? It has to be a smash spot to pass on these quarterbacks. I feel like they've got more trade value than anything else.
Yeah, it's man, it's so tough. You're absolutely right here. He can get wide receivers if he needs to. He doesn't have to settle for a running back with Kenneth Walker and Travis Etienne here. He's fine at running back. He can get wide receivers, and maybe that's actually the weaker spot for him, which I think actually makes dealing a little bit easier just because there's more quality receivers and running backs. So, oh man, I mean. Yeah, geez, I'd be after a Diggs type. I'd be after, someone like that plus, for one of these picks. And, it's going to take some wheeling and dealing here, I think, to get the value back. But I'm with you. I want to trade him. I don't want to use him.
All right, Chris, let's step into our top five. At number five, we've got two trades here, team two trades at number five. We've got Josh Allen, Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, T. Higgins, Drake London, Cooper Kupp, Dalton Schultz, Dallas Goedert, Adam Thielen, and Geno Smith rounding things out. We got Sammy Darnold and Trey Lance, Kareem Hunt, AJ Dillon, Cam Akers. So a good bit of depth really to start things off. Robert Woods in Houston, I think, is a really interesting play. Jahan Dotson out there in Washington as well. Peyton Hendershot in Dallas. Juwan Johnson, tight end out there in New Orleans. Isaiah Likely, another decent play. He's got 106 and 112, 201, 202, 207, and 212. So he's got some dart throws. He's got some very likable, bankable talent coming in, I think, on this draft. He's got a couple of firsts, not his own. I'm okay with that since we're looking at, in my opinion, a top 5 team here, Chris, in 2024. I think this team's in really, really good shape. This is another team that I really, really like. I think it's a little bit more thorough than what we just saw. It's got top end talent, it's got depth. It's a really, really good team here, Chris.
Yeah, so now I'm looking at every possible deal here to try and figure out a way to get this team up to to 103. Because I just don't like this Geno Smith sized hole in the long term. And I'm just not sure he can do it either. I want more than something like 106 plus a wide receiver or something. I don't know. Does 106 and T Higgins make sense to for anybody for either side here? I don't know. I don't think so. But that was sort of the first. That was sort of the first thing that came to mind with this team. At looking at trying to get up to 102 or 103 and pick a quarterback, but I'm not sure that makes sense to be honest with you. Because this team's a contender. Why take T Higgins off of it to get a young quarterback when Geno Smith could be equally productive for this year? So it's a quality team here. It's hard to look away from a team with Josh Allen, Joe Mixon, T Higgins, Drake London, and Kupp. Very solid all around. I think Trey Lance is the biggest wild card probably in fantasy this season in Superflex. If you have a productive Trey Lance that you can lock into that lineup, and a productive Trey Lance may be like a top 7 quarterback with his rushing ability. All of a sudden here, we're talking about a very, very tough team to stop. So this team's got a lot of depth, a lot of options. It's going to be interesting to see where this team goes.
Yeah, Chris, actually, in a lot of cases with a team like this, I would suggest trading these picks to get a little bit more bankable talent, guys you could throw into the lineup. But I'm not going to do that because I think he has those wild card guys on the bench that might be you might be able to throw into a starting lineup. So let's continue to get younger. Let's continue to build this thing out a little bit longer with the talent that he has. We mentioned a lot of turnover in other spots in the league. this is a team that I don't think really does need to turn it over at any time soon. In fact, I think he hasn't even reached his peak yet. So I'm going to want to continue going with this team the way it is. I'm going to want to use every single one of those picks. Maybe if I can get off of like one of these late seconds, the 207 or the 212 to get can I put both of them together to get a DeAndre Hopkins, something like that? If I've got to mix in a 202, let's see where Hopkins lands. And I think I like that a whole bunch better. Throw him in there instead of Thielen. I would have liked to have seen this guy go after a Stafford, right? Can we throw 202 should probably get Stafford based off what I've seen in drafts. Maybe in a 202 and 207, I think's got to put you in the Stafford conversation. Now we stacked Cup and Stafford. I think we feel so much better about that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we could get Stafford, or I mean, worst case scenario, maybe go after an Aaron Rodgers type. I'm with you. I want to make minor upgrades. I think with this team, if I could get a Hopkins or a Keenan Allen, get a small upgrade at quarterback as well, and then I think we're getting ready. We're getting primed to make a real run here, and then with all the picks we have, even after trading some of them for upgrades, we still got two 2024 firsts as well. So I like where this team's headed.
All right, Chris. Number 4, we've got Go Back, Go Pack Go, our defending champs. Go Pack Go sitting here at number 4 for the 2023 rankings. We've got Derek Carr, Josh Jacobs, Dalvin Cook, CeeDee Lamb, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Evan Ingram, Hollywood Brown, James Conner, and Kyler Murray. Guys we've got on the bench that are worth mentioning. We've got Brock Purdy. We've got Cortland Sutton, Alan Lazard, Chase Claypool, Kadarius Toney, Cole Kmet, Cade Otton, Trey McBride. Down here for picks, no first this year. We've got a late second kicking, no first next year. And in 2025, things start to return to normalcy. A lot of pick trading in this league, Chris. That's one thing I've noticed. No one's got their own pick, and everyone's got 400 picks, regardless. Chris, I like this team, man. It's defending champ for a reason. I think he's in this thing for one last hurrah this year, and before things really fall off what they call the precipice of mediocrity. But I think he's got one more go at it. Chris, I had this team pegged at 4 right from the start. This is the only team that I never wavered about where he belonged. I knew it was going to be a top 5 team, but I knew it wasn't going to be elite, in my opinion. So, look at how much. It's kind of interesting. You don't see this too often here, Chris, but last year he had Carr and Jacobs on the same team. Obviously, Carr has moved on. We've got Keenan and Mike Williams. Then we've got this triumvirate of Cardinals of Marquise Brown, James Conner, and Kyler Murray. I assume Brock Purdy took him to the promised land last year, but you don't really see that too often. But anyway, regardless, I think this team has a very, very solid floor, a sizable ceiling, not a top 3 team here, though I could see him winning it again. It's definitely possible, but I've got him at number 4 here, Chris, and I feel very comfortable with him outside the top 3.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I like where he's headed. I like where he is with this team. It's easy to see how he won last year. Jacobs was a monster. Keenan Allen had some big games down the stretch. Brock Purdy was great. So, I'm with you here though on the overall point that this is probably the last year you're going to talk about this team in the top 4 conversation. Derek Carr landed in a very favorable position. That was a huge break this offseason for him. We'll see what happens with Dalvin Cook. A lot of rumors about him maybe playing elsewhere, getting released by the Vikings. We'll see what happens there. I think that could be an interesting turn of events for this team if Dalvin ends up in a not so favorable spot. But we'll have to see what happens there. Kyler Murray, we're all kind of waiting on his injury issues too. I mean, this team, if Kyler Murray's not ready and Brock Purdy's not the guy in San Francisco, this team could be, world of hurt here without a second quarterback. So just something to monitor with this team here. And if that happens, it's almost got to be like a full pivot, right? If the chain of events happen all negative, right, where Dalvin Cook goes somewhere poor, like a poor spot, Kyler Murray's not ready, Brock Purdy isn't the guy in San Francisco, you got to get off a lot of players here and turn do a 180 really quickly, right?
No, I disagree there, Chris. I think you've got to just surge forward. I think we can't let a Brock Purdy derail this ship. I mean, that just flat out cannot happen at all. I mean, I think there's enough depth here where we can get off of. I mean, God, why not just give up a Sutton and Alan Lazard? You know, I mean, Lazard ain't going to bring you back too much, but a Kadarius Toney is a decent play here where we can easily get off these guys. And I think there's enough middling group of quarterbacks that you can bring back, whether it's an aging guy, right? I mean, he doesn't have his pick next year, so it's got to be full throttle ahead. And I'm not letting a Brock Purdy benching derail this ship.
Well, it's more so Kyler Murray, not being ready. I mean, he's the ace, right? He's the guy who's going to score a lot of points. If he's not ready, I'm with you though. I think that's maybe the better play is to just go for it, since you don't have your picks. Just try and get that stopgap quarterback. I mean, heck, we just talked about Geno Smith, but he's a guy you could probably get relatively cheaply, if a guy like that, maybe not Geno Smith exactly, but a guy like that just kind of stopgap for you for a season and go for it.
All right, Chris, number 3, we've got Richie Rich here, Richie06 at number 3. We've got Jared Goff, David Montgomery, Miles Sanders, Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin, Gerald Everett currently at the tight end spot, Kamara, Mike Evans, and Jalen Hurts. Guys on the bench, Cordero Patterson still not going anywhere. Jonathan Taylor obviously going to be in the lineup wherever he wants to be. Past that, Greg Dortch, what a game he had late last season. I think it might have been a playoff game if I can remember. He had like 10 catches, something stupid. Austin Hooper is a guy that we've been loving in the late teens in our draft so far this year. I think he's an interesting situation out there in Vegas. Taxi Squad's got nothing. Malik Willis is done. That project failed. Move off of him where possible. He does have pick 10 in this year's draft. No first next year. Does have his first, second, third, fourth, fifth in 2025. Well, Chris, this team has, you're obviously going to throw Jonathan Taylor in there for, Kamara if he's in prison, or David Montgomery. I just think there's so much top end talent with this team here, Chris, including Jalen Hurts at quarterback, Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown. I think you can kind of mask whatever we're putting together at running back past Jonathan Taylor to turn this into a top 3 legit contender.
I like this team a lot, Matt. I like this team a lot. I can't wait to see the top 2 teams because this team I'd have pegged very, very highly as well. This is a super weird kind of thing to do, and I don't know if you can get it done, but I would love to swap Goff for Kirk Cousins. If I have to add a small piece, I want to get the double stack. You see where I'm going here? I've got the Hurts, AJ Brown stack. If I get the Cousins Jefferson stack too, I think it's just sort of a very minor, just kind of nuanced deal that could end up kind of making the difference for this team. I mean, Goff was so good last year, but the ability to kind of double stack is just sort of really enticing with this team because Goff is sort of similar value to Cousins, and it could be something that you could do, relatively reasonably. But that was the first thing that stuck out to me is if I could do something like that, just to kind of give myself that very tiny advantage by doing that. So I look at something like that. Otherwise, man, I love this team. I would just hang tight and just score a ton of points.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly what's going to happen. We're going to see what happens with Mike Evans, right? I mean, this is a guy that we've obviously hitched our wagon to over
Never
and over
worried.
and over again. I mean, suddenly, we used to have Jameis closing his eyes and throwing as far as he could. Then we had Tom Brady who was throwing the ball 50 times at 50 years old. I've got Baker Mayfield. He's a little bit of a gunslinger. We know that, but blind Jameis would be a significant upgrade over over Baker Mayfield at this moment. But listen, I like this team here, Chris. We do need to talk about tight end a little bit. Gerald Everett is a guy that's been able to be productive. I hope he stays with the Chargers. I think he's going to be fine there again. Herbert actually went to him quite a bit last year. I really loved Everett in the spots that we had him. So, that could be our glaring weakness. And then, Kamara. Is he going to beat the legal system or is he going to become a victim? of the legal system and miss a little bit of time. I think those are going to be the big questions here. This team is certainly not bulletproof here, Chris, but I really like its potential to get home.
Yeah, I'm with you. Kamara's the key wild card for this team, right? The good news is he does have David Montgomery here as well. So you plug Jonathan Taylor into the starting lineup at running back, you move Montgomery down into the flex, and I don't think you missed too much, but obviously, Kamara, he's a guy who can score a ton of points for you. So it would be a loss if he misses him, but he's okay even if he does miss Kamara.
All right, Chris, top two teams here. Chris, I went back and forth between 1 and 2 1,000 times today. It tore me apart. It was a tough decision. I mean, just look what I have on the screen right now, Chris. I mean, this team's loaded. It's I want to call this team 1B to the 1A, but we've got Action Jackson here too. It was a really, really tough decision, obviously. We've got Lamar, we've got Chubb, Najee Harris, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Treylon Burks, and Kirk Cousins. Guys on the bench, we have no one really to speak of. Deontay Foreman's a decent option, I think, out there in Chi-Town. Eli Mitchell, Ramondre Stevenson, and Juju, both of those guys could find time in the starting lineup as well. Richie James, Chris, is a deep sleeper. You just texted me about an hour or so ago in like the 20th round of a 14-teamer. See what happens with him. Noah Fant, we'll see if he comes to life out there in Seattle. He's got pick 204, which could be an interesting play. Stuff looks pretty intact going forward as well. Chris, his team's loaded. A couple of decent options here on the bench as well. Kirk Cousins not going anywhere, Chris. He's locked and loaded on this team. So your last hopeful shot not happening. I think, Chris, what made this team number 2 for me is this running back position. I want to love these two guys, but it's becoming increasingly harder as we've done startups to see where they've gone and just kind of hearing how their offseason has gone. No one seems to love these guys anymore. So why should we?
Yeah, I mean that's fair. And then the obvious question too is where the heck is Lamar Jackson going to play? I mean this is insane. I think we're going to find out very quickly after the draft where Lamar Jackson's going to play, and hopefully that kind of settles things here for Action Jackson, Coach Chase G. So that you're right on the running backs. Man, one guy though on the opposite end of the spectrum, Matt, at running backs, Ramondre Stevenson. I mean, he is getting an absurd amount of love, and I think we're both kind of out on him at his price. What's your thoughts here on Ramondre Stevenson? I'm out on his price. I mean, he's been going way too high for me in startups. There's just too many quality receivers, around the area he goes in startups. But I mean, the path to volume sure looks like it's going to be there.
Sure. I mean, it always does with the Patriots running backs until the ball gets snapped and you don't know who the hell is going to, excuse the language, who the heck is going to be standing behind the quarterback. You just don't know. Sure, it looks like a sure thing, but I'm not willing to bank on it. We're in what, I don't know, approaching 40 leagues, I think, and we have 0 Ramondre Stevenson. And I would say there's maybe 10 total guys that are fantasy relevant that we have 0 shares of. And he's on that list. And I will never draft him. Absolutely not. I won't. For me, I hate to say this because it's not true. Like, he's not a 0. But when somebody says, "Oh, I'm giving you Ramondre Stevenson," that doesn't move my needle at all.
We've just, as a collective, we've just been burned too many times by the Patriots running back situation. I mean, year in, year out, it has almost never paid off since the likes of Corey Dillon, basically. You were always better off just drafting, the lower ranked guy. It was James White for a number of years who was the lower ranked guy, and he would just produce for you. So I wonder if that's another case here, and maybe that those James Robinson shares will start paying off along the way. But back to this team here. I mean, it's super strong, Matt. I mean, regardless of Ramondre Stevenson, I think Nick Chubb and Najee Harris, yeah, they're the weak point. But I mean, if that's your weak point, I'm feeling pretty darn good. I think it's well worthy of, the number two ranking if those are kind of the two weak spots in the lineup as they are.
Yeah, it's a good team, man, and it's young too. I mean, God, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, and Chris Olave. That's a nice little three wide receivers you want to build around. And Traylon Burks a little bit lower down there. You've got the ace up the sleeve and Travis Kelsey. Just so much to like on this team. Again, you mentioned a couple of holes or a couple of potential holes, couple of things that make it not bulletproof, but this is almost as close to bulletproof as it gets. So, Chris, we mentioned that the 101 has not yet been seen, and for good reason. We're heading up here to the commish. Crab Tooch is our number one team. Let me know what you think about this, Chris. I think I got this spot on. I feel really good. We've got Justin Fields. We've got Pollard, Brian Robinson. That's my running back hole that I'm about to fill with the better B. Robinson, Bijan. Devontae Adams, Steph Diggs, Amon-Ra, Mark Andrews. We've got Rashad White and Derrick Henry. Then we've got Patrick Mahomes, man. Last guy we're mentioning is starting lineup to really complete the deal. We've got Dak Prescott sitting here on the bench here, Chris. Our guy, Samaje Perine, love him every single draft this offseason. Eli Moore, probably worth a mention. Tyler Higbee. Could somebody tell me why he is plummeting in drafts? I mean, I'm getting him in like the 14th, 15th round. I mean, as long as he's with the Rams, which all signs pointing to that being the case, he's going to get peppered. I mean, we saw that at times last year. Anyway, moving on. Taxi Squad's got a whole bunch of nothing. But Wan'Dale Robinson, I guess Jalen Tolbert worth mentioning. Jake Ferguson, maybe he's the guy out there in Dallas at tight end. He's got 101. He's got 109. He's got an extra second next year, a couple seconds this year, a couple of darts worth throwing. Did I get this one right, Chris?
Oh yeah. It's really not even close for me, Matt. I mean, this is a clear number one team. That there's really no issues with it. I mean, you've got Justin Fields and Patrick Mahomes leading the way. I mean, those guys are dominant at the position. The one hole he does have in his starting lineup, he's going to fill it. As soon as the rookie draft starts. So I'm not even going to try and debate whether you got this one right. It's spot on. I think the question is there anything you do with it, right? Because if there's one knock, I would say it's his lack of depth, right? I mean, aside from Dak Prescott, we don't really have a ton of positional depth. So is there a way to rectify that? Or you just say, you know what, I've got 109, I've got 206, I've got 209. Let me use those for depth. Hope a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson pans out and gives me something. Hoping Elijah Moore gives me something and just kind of call it a day. Or do you, trade a guy like Prescott who's sitting there on your bench for a lower tier QB plus a wide receiver or something? Is that on the table? What's your kind of thought here in addressing his lack of depth?
Yeah, I mean, I would never have a Dak Prescott sitting on the bench. I mean, he's never, ever going to see the light of day on this team, barring an injury. I mean, and that's just too much of an expensive insurance policy for me to be wasting there on the bench. I mean, he's going as at worst, another top 18 player in startup drafts right now. I mean, can I go get myself a Ty Hill straight up for him? Can I go and get myself? I mean, it's unlikely, but like a Jalen Waddle is going around that range as well. Can I get like a Devontae? Oh, Devontae's already on this team, but can I get somebody in that range, plus a couple pieces or plus another pick, something like that for Devontae Adams? But I mean, you have to. You can't sit there with a Dak Prescott on your bench all year long. Cannot do it. No way. I don't care. I think we've got to drop down to like a fifth round startup pick type guy, a Chris Godwin, and add a lower tier quarterback, maybe an Aaron Rodgers. That feels a little bit light for Dak Prescott, but something that, that's just the framework for a deal. It's got to be done. A good to great position player and a phasing out quarterback.
That's exactly where I'm at. Yeah, it's the first place my mind went to was to make a deal similar to that. I think you get better players than the two you just mentioned, obviously, but I mean, I'm with you. I think that's a move that would greatly help this team just kind of solidify themselves, you know, to get this thing over the hump. I mean, it's fine as is, but you can always tweak and just kind of make yourself 1-2% better.
Yeah, and I think that's all that really needs to be done for this team because it is right there. This is a locked and loaded team. Very, very great build here, Tooch. Great job getting that 101. It's gonna be nice and enjoyable time to be throwing him into that lineup when it's all said and done. All right, Chris, let me run through the list one more time for you. At 12, you've got At Least We Tried. At 11, we have B. Hartley. At 10, Mac to the Future. At number 9, These Pits Don't Stank. At number 8, HB Waves. 7 is Michigan Wolverines. 6, we've got Maybe Next Year. 5, we have Team 2 Trades. Team 4, Go Pack Go. 3 is Richie Rich. 2 is Action Jackson. And number 1 is Crab Tooch. So, Chris, I said it at the top, man, at the very first episode. I love this league, man. Got guys who know what they're doing, guys that are clearly headed in directions. And I think it's made for an enjoyable tenure in this league. It just makes for a lot of fun when you've got guys selling, guys buying. It just kind of works out. It's a perfect marriage. I think it's going to be an interesting situation in a couple of weeks. In a couple of years. And I do want to follow up. I do want to know what happens with pick 2 and pick 3. I think that's going to be the most interesting thing for this league this offseason. Chris, any final thoughts?
Not much, Matt. I think we had a great league tonight. Really enjoyed looking at it. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. We had a lot of fun doing this one. Hope you guys enjoy it.
All right. Have a good night, guys. Good luck this year.